Good afternoon. Does that sound okay? All right. I'm a wildlife biologist who changed and got in more into environmental education. And here's some of the work I do. The past years, graphic design for informal or non-personal communications. And it's interesting hearing some of the speakers. Emily brought it up from Texas on the Llano River. They have education program, and a few others that we heard. Let's see. So we use signs for all kinds of things. We're familiar with this. This is just a review at this point. And one of them here, the third one down, research management, this would be most focused towards you. You're doing some research, you're doing management, you might want to let the public know or get them involved. And if you can't spend time staying on the river 24/7 to meet anybody who comes by, you're going to have to get the word out in other ways. So, what are the goals of having signs? We want the most people to read them, the most people possible. And not just read them, we want the people to remember what the signs say. Just because somebody reads something doesn't mean they'll remember them. And there is a kind of the next step would be if it's to adjust some kind of behavior. All right, see that sign? Simple sign? How many people saw how many miles it was, even in those 5 seconds or less? If you said you noticed 8 miles, that's how fast we read things. If you didn't, don't worry, I did that pretty fast. Just think of this. This is the way we read when we're driving a highway. You see signs, and the signs are made similarly. They're made so you can read them very, very fast. They have upper and lower case letters. They're sans serif. Do you know what that means? Letters that don't have a cap on top or a cap on the bottom. We'll get to that in a little later. So this is very quick and easy to read. Also notice these signs, like a site like this, a refuge, it's brown. We have certain color codes that have become standardized on a lot of our road signs in this country. These are for various sites of interest, especially federal, state, and other places. Most of our highway signs are all green. So we know where they are, we can cue into them very quickly, and we can read them very quickly. Could you read that one? Could you read that one? Right. So there are certain criteria that make signs very, very readable, and that's the first thing. You have to get things readable, people to read them in the first place. Interesting signs here by a water district, and I don't remember where it is, but very interesting shapes. Pretty unique. They aren't like the highway signs. But all those letters there, the information, it is still in a very quick and easily read way, the main words. The icons you have to learn. So the people who use this area, wherever this trail system is around some water district, they would get familiar with these. And because these sign shapes aren't just square, they're different color, all these signs around that system, they'll recognize them for this site. So you can make something, it's almost like advertising, branding a shape as well as color, but using some basic graphic communication tools like the fonts there. So we're going to go through a bunch of signs here, all kinds of various areas, national parks and others, and see what the graphic communication tools are that are being used in these. All right. Quite a bit of information there that wouldn't be used as a sign where people are zooming by it. It's where you drive up as an entrance of somewhere. A lot of information, but it's oriented in a pretty readable way. That's sans serif fonts. It's also mounted vertically, and a lot of informational signs need to be vertical. It's quick reading, and it's just the way we perceive them. A lot of signs are clustered in an area. That's a lot of information. But it's at a place where people will slow down to read them all, potentially. This would be at a parking lot, at a trailhead. So it's a very convenient area where people would expect to receive information. So we cluster signs where they have time to read them, and then educational signs are usually located where the site of what you're talking about in the signs. How about this? The beavers, and then there's a cross-section of a pond. This gets into the next thing about the graphics of signs, is to have graphics that really complement the messages. People, we really do respond to visuals, not just text. Also notice the sentence at the top, it gives you a good idea. It's not just the beavers. It's something about them, something specific. Here they're building wetlands. Interpretive or educational signs, 45 degrees. Just think, how do you read papers or books or iPads or even your phones? It's mostly at this angle. This is a very comfortable position ergonomically. People are used to standing like that. It's a casual way to read. Use upper and lower cases always, and left justify. It's pretty much a standard, the way we print. In some cases, there are instances where people do odd things with text sideways, things on the right. Those are exceptions, and it may be useful for a targeted audience. But if you want to get the most people to read things, stick with a standard that we're all used to. Complete sentences. That includes the titles. Writing a complete sentence out. It really has an effect on the way we understand what the information that we're going to get, if we even get down lower on the sign. So I wouldn't have water management, and that's it. But what if I said water management is good? Well, that's quite a statement. It's a value, it's a judgment. But you notice what I just did? I'm talking about getting rid of these passive verbs too. And what did I just do? Water management is good. Well, how about turning it around? What's good about the water management? Think about that and say, well, it helps people. Oh, there's another verb. So say, water management helps people. There. It's better than this passive sort of a statement. And we use this passive. It's very, very common. I use it all the time myself. But to get people, when they're reading signs, and retain the information, an active verb will help that goal. Here we have a sign. Landowners offer frogs native home. Look at the verb, offer. In the subtitle of that paragraph, rare frog sings again. It's sing. Here we have backyard refuge, breeds success. It's breeds. And the verb breed and sing, it's all related to the frogs. So there's quite a message we get, even if you don't read any further and you walked away, you could tell somebody, I just saw something about those frogs, about breeding somewhere, and they're successful. See how it ties in? And that will be a lot to help people connect with your site, even if they don't read the text here. Also, graphics, some interesting photos or other graphics, drawings. It helps people. What did I do? Excuse me? Did I? Thanks. Also, you notice down here, I believe it was the last speaker or in Texas, somebody talked about funding. Oh no, in the Verde Valley, I believe. Well, here you notice all these little logos at this corner. That's a lot of space, a lot of real estate for a sign. These signs can sometimes cost a lot of money. Well, here are different agencies and even businesses that contribute funding, and that can be important for you to get this kind of material out. But they all need to be recognized. So even though it takes up 12% of this sign, it was useful. It got a lot of money in to get this sign installed and fabricated. So look around, if you need money to do communications of any kind, communication, education, look around at nonprofits. The Phoenix Zoo is a nonprofit. other Audubon clubs, other nature clubs, Ducks Unlimited maybe. Even some commercial places, a lot of supermarkets have community funding or community outreach. Hardware stores, some large chains. Okay, thematic sign, titles. That's what I'm calling the full sentences. Sans serif for quick reading, 80 to 120. It depends on the font. And then they will be readable in 3 seconds if you have that. We read fast, just almost subconsciously. Subtitles, same thing, smaller point size, 35, 60. It'll take 30 seconds or less to go through 3 or 4 paragraphs that have a title. Serif fonts. You familiar with serif fonts? They're the kind we see in print, like newspapers, books. It's a very comfortable way to read when you have upper and lower case with serif fonts. And at this point size, it's readable. And these signs, for the most part, we're looking at things, you're standing near them. That's about 4 feet away. So these signs would be readable. And for the most part, you have little enough text, not a lot, just a little enough that covers what you want to say, but within 3 minutes, people would read it all. So, knowing those basic rules, what do you think of that? Well, we do have a good title up there. It even has 2 verbs. The help is for you, the reader. You help the native fish thrive. Thrive is another one. Good action verbs has a message right there. You can decide if you want to read further or not just from that. But this has too much information on here. Good graphics, pictures, information on native species, even crayfish and a leopard frog for non-natives. There's a map of the river. There's a lot of text. We could make 3 different signs out of all this, even though this sign is in place on the Cocodino National Forest at about 4 feet across. It's a great big sign, but a little too much information. Here's another sign that I found. Look at that title. WHSRN is the site of regional importance. Don't use abbreviations unless your audience knows it. That water district, people in that area may know it. But if you're at a site where you're getting people from across the country or foreigners, people visiting from everywhere, they may not know that. You notice down here that second paragraph is the full wording for that title. But that's huge. So it doesn't work well. Also, these pictures here, these 4 pictures and this map, there's not very much information, even quickly, graphically, relating them to the text. So include graphics that complement your text. Make sure they do. One way of testing is show them to people who know nothing about your project you're working on. Even middle 10-year-olds, 10, 14-year-olds, get them to tell you what the sign means, and you'll know if there's a problem. Here's a great sign at this beautiful river valley. This is down some river valley in the Southern Alps in New Zealand. Look at the sign. It's the same. It's a photo of the site. Do you need that? You're there. What do you need a photo? It's kind of wasted to have that photo. You could have other graphics there that talk something specifically about that site. This sign up top, there's obviously some wetland construction going on. But do you see that sign? The upper left says before, the middle one says and after. Somewhere in there is this area. Do you notice how the photo was taken? If you make that out, it's at a different angle. It's kind of difficult to interpret. If you can't get the photos in the exact same position, and we saw that today on the Yana River, I believe, or where was it, with tamarisk removal. We had some really good photos today showing before and after shots. Exact same location. Worked well. If you can't get exact, then put some sort of graphic, like an outline of the area, and then an arrow over to exactly where it's moved to. Here's an interesting wetland and floodplain sign. Notice there's no talk about what about wetlands and floodplains? But also, the pictures below show a little bit of it right here, but not very clear. You could do some really nice graphics to show the layout of what a floodplain is, how it relates to a river. Here you have a really nice illustration on a sign that shows underwater. Great having pictures that show people information from a different point of view than you're standing at. Here's a historic sketch. You see covered wagons here, and over on this side, you see a river. This is the Bear River flowing right against Sheep Mountain as it carves a little gully around Sheep Mountain. And it's just west of Soda Springs, Idaho. All these wagons, this is the Oregon Trail. So in the early 1800s, hundreds or thousands of people were traveling there. Today, there's a road right along here. And there's this sign, this picture is on a sign there. So it shows people something from a point of view they can't get from the past. So historical images may come in useful in getting people to have a connection to your site or your resources. Busy signs, people won't read them. Book on stick is, imagine a book just sitting on a pole, just a lot of text. People will ignore it. White space is just room around things. You notice here we have regulations, and here we have a nice list. There's 5 items in that list. If you have to list things, 7 maximum. After that, you really risk people forgetting things, even if they read them. So keep your lists short. There was somebody earlier had regulations on mining, I believe it was, up in Colorado. There's papers for that with more information that they're bound to. But on a sign, people won't read that and remember it well. Here are nice graphics that actually they're small, but here's a graphic that shows somebody throwing trash out. Here's somebody pouring water at the fire ring. So you could give graphics that role model the behaviors you want or the information you want to pass on. I love this sign because it's the worst sign I've seen. It has a lot of information. First of all, Netley Marsh, it's some Canadian preserve. It also has it in French. Everything of these 4 plants, has it in English and French, every other line or even on one line. A number of our sites may need 2 languages, may need Spanish or other languages in the US. If you do use 2 languages, separate them. Totally separate signs, or have something on one side. I blacked it out again. On one side and one on the other. Another thing is a topo map. That's a lot of detail. Avoid topo maps. Leave topo maps on their maps. That's a lot of space where you could have some very effective communication. Don't use signs as a reference, totally. Okay? Also, you don't need a lot of bolts like this. So, how do you make a good sign? Ultimately, is just be sensible. Can you read that from here? No washing of anything at the well site. Warning, radioactive. Do not use water for drinking or cooking. Safe for other purposes. Now, know about you, but I don't think I would use it for any purpose. I don't know why they didn't just cap the well, but they decided just to put a sign there and trust that people will not use it. Okay? Or just be creative. Look at all that artwork. You may recognize some of the animals or plants. 4th graders painted them all. And it got incorporated into a sign, which then goes to show the food web. So you could get the community involved or get locals involved. So well-planned signs attract people. Good graphics. Picture is worth 1,000 words. And also people understand thematic messages. Full sentences with action verbs. All right. Any questions? Any of you have locations where you need Are you planning educational things? Yes.
Bunny?
What's your recommendation for signs at cultural sites where you don't want people to destroy the sites, and that's your major message?
Having signs that say essentially rules, it's difficult. For the most part, try to word things in positive statements. If you have a list of don'ts, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. What did you do as a kid? Come on. You have to be realistic. For the most part, try to word things in a positive way. Show images of people doing positive things. Make it statements about being the value to them themselves. This is your resource. You've probably seen signs that do that. A lot of things, it takes more on a lot of cases, though, than just a sign, too. But you can use a negative statement. Make it very, very unique. I had one BLM sign where I had to do a bunch of regulations, about 8 things. 7 of them were worded positive. One of them was firearms. No discharging of firearms. Made it stand out because it's separate. It's only one no statement, but I put it on the most egregious. So for cultural things, it takes a lot more, but perhaps it's an educational thing with a series of signs that educate the history or importance and the regulations somewhere, beginning, end, incorporated in it. All right, anyone else?
In the back? Recommendations on hazardous areas?
Hazardous areas. Yeah, be very, very blatant. That gets into other aspects, but be the hazard sign, big red letters, large. Also, put up barriers of some kind, especially if it's a specific thing. If you say hazard, rattlesnakes along this trail, you're not going to just put a wall all along both sides. But for something like a drop-off, restrict. Put actual restrictions in. Depending on what your agency, you may have protocols. I had a supervisor at a Park Service unit that actually removed railing from a small footbridge, and he had a very sound legal reason for doing it. So I can't speak on all situations. So if you're part of an agency, state, anything, check into that with people in your agency that do that kind of work. But otherwise, make it very, very blatant and explain in very good terms. Again, use action verbs if you can. Anyone else?
Right.
Interesting. So you're saying where public can go onto private land? I see. Oh, I see. So beyond this fence, you're going to look at that thing over there, even though it's private. Oh, interesting. Oh, that's a tough one. If it's an obvious, I would think if it's an obvious landform, you could talk about it because everybody can see it. As far as not going there, that's another point, is if you point it out, people may want to go there. You may have to not mention it. Again, there could be some sort of partnership or what that landowner wants too, even though you're pointing it out. That I'm not sure on that one. That could be case-by-case study. I wouldn't know right offhand. Sorry about that. That is tough. Anyone else? Well, thank you very much. I know it's a little departure from research, but thank you.